Hello and welcome again. This time it's a special edition of This Much is True Crime. Hello, Professor David Wilson.
Professor David Wilson greets Martin Frizell. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And normally we'd wait a few days, but of course we had been talking and had been predicting, different ways on this one, the outcome of the Erin Patterson Beef Wellington mushroom case, which is only just a few hours old. After 6 days of deliberations, the jury came back and yes, they decided she was guilty as hell, guilty as charged. Congratulations, Professor, you got that one right.
Are you now prepared to eat humble pie, albeit not Beef Wellington?
Can you understand, though, that it's not just me, there was doubt amongst quite a few people that she would be guilty. Also, the fact that I think she didn't even think she was going to be. She put up hoardings around her house, expecting that she would walk free, and she didn't want prying eyes from cameras. Maybe she was going to do some sort of deal with the press. I don't know. But she's not been sentenced. That's still to come, but I fully expect it's going to be a life term, is it?
Oh, absolutely. Australia, a lifetime in Australia is between 15 and 25 years. In exceptional circumstances, there will be a case made that this is an exceptional circumstance, given the numbers of people who were murdered and, of course, the attempted murder on Ian Wilkinson. In exceptional circumstances, there can be a whole life tariff applied to the offender. So let's see what happens to her. I think actually, Martin, I've been asked a number of times today, was I surprised by the verdict? And I've replied in relation to that question. I was more surprised by the numbers of people who thought she was innocent. And to me, it was pretty obvious from the get-go she was guilty, from the interview that she gave ad hoc to a film crew who doorstepped her, when it was quite clear to me, I've had to watch a lot of these things in reality. It was quite clear to me that she was lying. I think what was surprising about the verdict, and this is what I think actually tipped you over into the she must be innocent category, was that usually if a jury is out for the length of time this particular jury was out for, they come back with a not guilty verdict, whereas in fact on this occasion they came back with a guilty verdict. But for me, she was as clear as a pikestaff guilty.
See, what I thought, though, was that it was all about beyond reasonable doubt. I thought there was a genuine chance that the defense could prove that you had to be 100% sure that this is what you wanted to do. And I know the judge said, forget the motive. You don't need to have a motive. But for me, I think you did. And I still don't understand. Maybe she'll say it now. Who knows? I still don't understand what the motive was. Why did she want to kill her in-laws?
If I just park that, and I promise I will return to what the motive is probably going to have been, the beyond reasonable doubt for me wasn't in question. It wasn't in question because of the various factors that you and I have discussed on the pod before. But what we've got to pay tribute to is how well she was defended. Because right from the start, she was saying this was a tragic accident. I might be a lousy cook, but I didn't intend for them to die as a result of what it was that I cooked. Her defense was no guilty mind, whereas in fact, there were a number of things related both to the lead up to the lunch and then what she did subsequent to the lunch, which quite clearly suggested that she did have a guilty mind because she was lying. In terms of the motive, you rightly acknowledge that there is no need to uncover a motive in a case such as this. But I would have thought the motive comes from the fact that she had invited her ex-husband Simon to the lunch, and she was angry at him because of various things that he had done on his tax returns, which acknowledges that they have separated. And I got the distinct impression it was as a consequence of alimony, a consequence of her having to come to terms with the fact she was indeed divorced from this man, and that altered her sense of self, her sense of being in the community. And at the end of the day, she must have hated him, and she must have, by extension, hated her in-laws.
It's an extreme reaction, though, isn't it, to want to kill them all altogether. And also, so he didn't turn up. He was invited, but he didn't turn up to the lunch. And we have the whole thing, of course. Obviously, the jury believed that she made, separate meals for those who died and a separate one for her. But how did you think she was going to get away with it, though?
I don't think she thought that far through. I really don't. And often, sometimes one is trying to explain the behavior of someone who has been convicted of killing 3 people and attempting to kill a 4th. And sometimes you have to say, we want to believe that they're kind of criminal masterminds, but they're not. These are people that make very poor decisions in the moment and think that somehow they'll be able to talk their way out of it should they ever be asked to account for their behavior. I don't think she thought through how she was going to get away with it. But remember, a lot of the clue as to what she did and how she did what she did came as a consequence of Ian Wilkinson surviving. And he therefore provides a lot of the evidence in relation to the plates, to the fact that she served them with distinctly colored plates. She had a different plate. She had a very small portion, and so forth and so forth. We got taken into the crime scene because, thank heavens, that poor man survived.
And I said, of course, either she's a callous murderer or she's just a very bad cook. But it turns out now that her children gave evidence recorded, and it turns out that certainly her eldest child said actually she was a very good cook. And then I'm just hearing as well that while she's been in jail during the trial, she was working in the kitchens. Can you believe it?
Well, I've often said this to be the case. Often what the offender will do is import their life from outside the prison into the jail, and that life that they had outside the prison, they try to recreate within the prison. So, for example, one prominent killer that I've written about, a man called Brian Field, who kills a retired academic called Peter Farquhar in Buckingham, who taught Brian Field at university literature. Guess what Brian Field is doing in prison? He's the library orderly. They recreate their lives from outside inside, and that makes them difficult sometimes to manage whilst they are in jail. They try to pull the wool over the prison authorities as well.
I wonder if the judge will take into account the fact that obviously she's guilty now, the fact that she herself went to hospital, so she obviously kept up the pretense that we've all been poisoned by this food accidentally. So she went to hospital too, but I think she discharged herself the next day. Wasn't in hospital very long. But in doing so, she would have known that the others had been taken to hospital, and she didn't tell the authorities, didn't tell the doctors or the nurses it was Deathcap mushrooms. Had she done so, there's a chance that their agony may not have suffered so long, or they may have had a chance of survival.
Yes.
But in doing so, the kind of callousness of not saying what it was, will the judge take that into account and make sure the sentence reflects that?
Yes, he will, because there will be mitigating and aggravating circumstances. And there will be what we used to call in this country, a social inquiry report written about her. And obviously she was, by this stage, looking after 2 children. So there will be various aggravating and mitigating factors. And you're quite right to draw attention to the fact that, dying in this way is not a quick process. It's agonizing. Deathcap mushrooms, the poison within deathcap mushrooms, attacks the vital organs and effectively targets the liver. And it took something like 5 days before these poor victims actually passed. So this is, there's a tendency, and in fact, I've used the phrase myself today, talking about it in the media. There's a tendency to think about this as a kind of Agatha Christie, a cozy crime narrative. But the deaths that those victims experienced was not quick and would have been agonizing.
And we should point out to people that deathcap mushrooms are quite common. You got to be very, very careful. If you're going to go foraging, they are very similar apparently to the Asian cap mushroom, which is used in a lot of Chinese cooking. And that's why I was prepared to give it the benefit of the doubt. Because when you look into Australia, this dreadful case is not the first time people have died from deathcap mushrooms. It's not common, but it has happened before, and largely with Asian families because of their cooking, and also including one case, it was an Asian chef who mistook deathcap mushrooms and put them in the meal and killed himself and one of his colleagues. So, and I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, but it's possible that you could get mixed up with other things. So you've got to be very careful, this whole foraging thing. And hopefully, if anything good comes out of this, it makes people think, twice, 3 times, or maybe just go to the supermarket and get a mushroom.
And of course, deathcap mushrooms exist in this country too. They're quite common in the south of England. But there's part of the lie she told as well. You're talking about they're very similar to another type of mushroom. They can be bought in Asian supermarkets. And remember, one of her lies was that she had bought these mushrooms in an Asian supermarket in Melbourne. She couldn't remember the name. She didn't have a receipt. And quite clearly, that was just yet another of the lies that she told. She claimed as a consequence of suddenly realizing what had taken place and was panicking so much that she felt she had to say something in reply to these questions.
Why do you think this case has captivated people all around the world? It's Australia's biggest ever trial, sensational trial. Already there are documentaries, there will be dramas, absolutely in the pipeline. We know that about this case. But it's transfixed people around the world, this has. Even we're talking about it, obviously.
Well, I think 2 reasons. I think firstly, there is an inbuilt into human DNA. We've evolved as a species because of our ability to differentiate from those foodstuffs in the wild that would harm us and those foodstuffs in the wild that we could eat. Before we as humans started to cultivate crops, we relied on foraging. We relied on those kinds of behaviors. And I think inbuilt into our subconscious, inbuilt into the narrative of human beings is this desire to avoid being poisoned. And therefore, poisoning cases, our interest in poisoning cases is almost universal. And we call this toxophobia in the literature, the fear of being poisoned. So this was a story that was always had a kind of universal appeal. But I think there's a second thing, Martin, and we slightly touched on it earlier. I think it's also captured a zeitgeist. We are probably going to be discussing at some stage the new feature film of the Richard Osman book, The Thursday Monday Club. This zeitgeist is the kind of cozy crime genre that's now the kind of most popular form of crime fiction. And here's a case that conforms to the cozy crime narrative. It's, a remarkable place, a little village in South Australia. It's a rather wealthy woman. It's a single woman bringing up 2 kids. Could she really be guilty of doing this? It's got all the classic cozy crime genre narrative notes. And I think that's the second thing that's made it one of the stories that has captured not just Australian attention, but attention internationally.
I think you're right. I think it's the delivery of the poison, the fact it's in a Beef Wellington mushroom filling. I mean, it's almost like a Midsummer Murders kind of Sunday night, ITV, let's sit down and watch it. If it wasn't so deadly, as clearly as it was, it would be, completely ripe fodder for that. But of course, this was a painful death that these poor people experienced. And I'm quite sure the judge is going to reflect that when sentence is handed down, but probably not for a while yet. Now, there's a second thing we want to talk about on this episode, which is happening as we speak. I can't believe it, and I'm hoping that it's not true. But there's only 2 ways this is going to go. Either this is a very big scandal, or this is going to be one of the biggest defamation damages ever paid out by a newspaper. Now, we're talking about The Salt Path, which has been a worldwide bestseller. And it's the story of a couple down on their luck. The man called Moth gets a dreadful diagnosis of a brain disease, a degenerative brain disease. It's only going to go one way. I have personal experience of what that does to you. And they also have bad luck with their home. They are made homeless from a bad investment, so we're told. And off they go, and they think that just by sort of connecting with nature, walking 630 miles around the southwest coast, it might help them. And guess what? It does. So much so it's become a worldwide bestseller. There's now 3 books based on it, and a movie has just come out too. But this weekend in The Observer, either a very good piece of journalism or, as I'm saying, a dreadful piece of defamation, but the journalist has spent a long time speaking to people who know this couple and revealing, allegedly, that their names are different, there was embezzlement involved, and even questioning whether or not the degenerative brain disease is accurate or has even happened at all. And I'm trying to get my head around this. We've had them, of course, we're talking about Raynor Winn and her husband Moth. We've had them on the program. In fact, Gillian Anderson, who plays her in the movie, was sitting on this morning's sofa just a few weeks ago talking about this movie. Jason Isaacs plays Moth. And I just don't want to believe it's true, because if it is, it brings up all sorts of questions.
Well, and can I just say, because you've alluded to your own personal experiences there, and obviously you're talking about your wife Fiona, and you were in the newspapers at the weekend, and just a remarkable and a harrowing tale in terms of what you and Fiona have been going through.
Well, we're just getting on with it. That's in every day's, you live day to day, and we just have to get on with it. But when I hear about this kind of story, and if it is true what the journalist has uncovered, and the charity that Moth, or to give them their real name, I think it's Sally and Tim Walker, if the charity that Tim Walker was involved with and supporting, which is all about this degenerative brain condition, it's called cobasal degeneration, they've now taken a video that he did supporting them down from their website. They're concerned. They think there are questions to be answered. And so far, we're not getting a lot back from Raynor Winn. She has said, the Observer article is highly misleading, and we're taking legal advice and won't be making any further comment at this time. She goes on to say, the Salt Path lays bare the physical and spiritual journey Moth and I shared, an experience that transformed us completely and altered the course of our lives. This is the true story of our journey. Now, what it doesn't say there, or what it doesn't reference to, is an embezzlement accusation that started the whole ball rolling.
And look, I'm holding a copy of it as we speak. This is my wife's copy. It was read in her book club. There can't be a book club the length and breadth of the United Kingdom that hasn't read the Sunday Times bestseller, shortlisted for the Costa Book Awards, shortlisted for the Wainwright Book Prize. And of course, when I said to Anne, Anne, you do realize that there are allegations now about whether or not this is true. She was pretty devastated because, of course, this is a story of fortitude. It's also the story of people being down on their luck. It's the story of homelessness. It's the story of a man, allegedly, who has CBD and is going to CBD is irreversible. CBD is a terminal neurological brain disease. And so just by walking the 630 miles, guess what? He's still alive. And so you're quite right.
But David, he was diagnosed 18 years ago.
Yes.
And the journalist has spoken to 7 or 8 neurosurgeons or experts in this disease, and none of them seem believable that anybody could have lasted this long with that state of degenerative disease. 6 to 8 years is the average kind of lifespan you get for it, perhaps 12. But in all their history, in all their medical practice, they've never seen anyone or known anyone who's lasted that long.
And indeed, one of those experts spoken to by the journalist working for The Observer, one of those experts in CBD said it didn't pass the sniff test, what had been written within the book. And yet, as I say, here's my wife's copy. And in this copy, it says, this book is unflinchingly honest and true. And what therefore is being undermined is, well, is this made up? Is this fiction as opposed to fact? And if it's fiction as opposed to fact, then a lot of people will feel that they have been cheated. A lot of people will feel that they have been spun a yarn to make money out of them. And my biggest worry is I've got real alarm bells because, of course, of the Bell Gibson apple cider vinegar. Because for me, you know, I'm no expert on people committing embezzlement, which is alleged, or fraud, which is alleged. But I know full well that many young women copied the diet that Belle Gibson claimed that she had used as a way of curing her cancer. And that proved to be wrong. And the biggest worry for me is, well, look, does Moth win? In reality, Tim Walker, does he have CBD? And if he did have CBD, has he been cured, or has CBD been reversed as a consequence of going on this walk? You know, Martin, I'm no longer at the stage where I even know, did they go on the 630-mile walk? Is that all invented as well?
Well, we have to believe if they say it's a true journey, and they're careful to say it's the journey they're talking about, so maybe not, you know, what caused the journey, or they haven't actually talked about his medical condition. I mean, it's private, but it's not, because they've sold books and a movie on it. So they're just saying it's the true story of their journey. But I tell you what gets me, David, is that you're right about the hope. And I hope to goodness it's not false hope we're getting from this journey, how nature didn't quite cure him, but has made his life, you know, much more manageable and better to live with. And I think each book comes out that, you know, he's benefited from being with nature and doing all the walking and on the path and whatnot. And that's why I know for a fact that a lot of people have taken a lot of comfort from the salt path and probably gone out and done the same thing. It's certainly not a bad thing reconnecting with nature, but if there's the slightest inference that, you know, you could actually change the progress of such a dreadful disease, brain disease, by doing these things, I think I hope to goodness that they've not been fooling people.
Well, and you know who hasn't come out? You read out the statement made by Raynor Winn saying that the Observer article was misleading, and therefore everything is being alleged at the minute. We have to put any comment that we make in a very careful legal bubble. But at the same time, I was hoping to hear a statement from Penguin, who published the book. I was hoping to hear a statement from, well, BBC Films, who financed the film. I watched Gillian Anderson because obviously she was on this morning, but I also watched Jason Isaacs. And, you know, what must they feel about the fact that the characters that they were trying to portray may have simply have been grifters if these allegations prove to be true?
Well, I can tell you something. I mean, from being in that business, if we ever got anything wrong, and we do get things wrong, the first thing you do is you take it off your socials, you take it off your websites. You just literally, you know, when you're in a hole, you reverse at 100 miles an hour, and you take it as the most exposed thing is having something still up on a website. You get it off straight away. I've just looked, the Observer is doubling down. It's right at the front of its website, you know, as we speak. I went onto the Penguin website. They're still selling the book, still saying it's a true story. So someone, you know, is not telling the full story here. And as I said, it's either, you know, Carter Ruck, you know, just turning up at the Observer's offices with a big truck and saying, just load up all the dollars if you want, because we're going to sue the hell out of you. Or it's Penguin and the film company, whatever it is. I mean, is there a case, David, where, I'm not sure if it happened with apple cider vinegar in Australia, but could you ask for your money back from the publisher?
You absolutely can, and there is a case. There's a case that isn't particularly well known from 2003. A man called James Frey published a so-called true memoir about his life called A Million Little Pieces. And in that memoir, he claimed that he was a drug addict. He claimed he'd been an alcoholic from the age of 13. He claimed there were warrants out for his arrest in 3 different states. And the memoir was basically a misery lit, and he goes into a rehabilitation program to cure himself. And this book, A Million Little Pieces, became one of Oprah Winfrey's book of the month. And so it sold by the bucket load. And then people started saying, well, hang on a minute, this guy's 23, what an incredible story. Let's check out 1 or 2 of the facts that are supposedly in the book. And when they did so, they uncover the fact that a lot of this is invented. And so what happened was the publishing firm said that they would refund anybody who bought the book, who believed the book, and they had bought the book because the book was a true account. So the way that they overcame any kind of lawsuit was they then removed it from being non-fiction to fiction and said, if you've bought the book and you can send us your receipt, we will refund your money if you bought the book because you believed it was true when it's not.
But I mean, this story has got true all over it. The marketing is it's the true story. It's your
unflinchingly honest.
Triumph over adversity. This is how we got here. This is our amazing journey, and the kind of the inferences, you can do it too. Just to go back to the film, which is out just now, the 2 actors, Jason Isaacs and Gillian Anderson, both of whom I've had on the sofa and this morning before for other things, believe me, they wouldn't have touched anything if they thought there was any kind of ambiguity or if this wasn't a true story. They'd have run a mile from that. Both of them are the kind of actors who are incredibly, invested in what they do. And they pick up, they don't need to do stuff for no reason. They pick up this kind of story and want to do it because they thought it was a great, true story.
And the interesting thing is both Gillian Anderson and Jason Isaacs, I saw both interviews, and they supported Raynor Winn when she was talking. I wonder, one of the things that happened to James Frey is that Oprah Winfrey interviewed him and told him on her sofa how much people had been let down by what he had written and what was claimed for his memoir, which was fiction, not non-fiction. And she also then got the publisher on the sofa saying, and you should have checked, you should have fact-checked. You've got a responsibility in allowing this to go out without there being any fact-checking. And I do wonder if, there's going to be a similar reaction in that way to Penguin, who was representing, who's Raynor Winn's literary agent? Was there any fact checking about what this was done, about what was produced before it was published? There are lots of multiple layers here if this transpires to be fiction as opposed to reality. And remember, Martin, we've discussed Baby Reindeer. Do you remember that? Do you remember the Richard Gadd Netflix sensation, Baby Reindeer?
It's a true story.
This is a true story. And that case is still going through the courts in the United States.
It's such an explosive little word, true, isn't it?
Mm.
It's got to be.
It really is.
Yeah,
but for me, and for what you've been saying, and you with great humanity because of the circumstances that you find yourself in with Fiona and the circumstances Fiona is dealing with, you with great humanity talked about the impact about what lying does for people who are experiencing similar but not necessarily the same circumstances. And if this has been a fraud, then I think this is potentially one of the most damaging books that's been published in this country, in the last 5 years.
I'll just say again, because, they've come out and said the Observer article is highly misleading. We're taking legal advice and won't be making any further comment. Well, they're going to have to say something soon, I'd have thought again. But so it's all allegations, and I really do hope it's all nonsense and they come out and say, there's another few books now because we've been defamed and here's more of the true story. I want to hear that. But just to come back to what you said there, David, about the Alzheimer's condition that my wife has. She went through a trial last year, and I was sticking needles into her 3 times a day for a year, which wasn't the best thing to do, but I did it, and I think it might have worked. Wasn't too sure. We still don't know because it's still going through its stages. But I said to the doctor, I said, do we know if it was the drug itself or was it a placebo? They said it's a blind trial, so we can't tell you. But the doctor did say there's a third option here. There's a third drug that actually works better than all those things. And I said, what's that? He said, hope. Oh. He said, just the fact that you've taken part in it. And when we've done trials before, when the people who had the placebo, sometimes they had better results than those who had the actual drug, just because hope is actually something that actually just makes you feel better and, can just spur you on and keep you going. And I can't help but think people reading The Salt Path and seeing, Moth's dreadful condition, but crikey, getting out there, walking 630 miles, wow, there's hope in that. There's hope. Surely that must be, what's really kind of sort of helping him survive and whatnot. And so if it's basically a made up story to sell a book, oh dear. I mean, I personally will feel quite crushed by it. I'm hoping, as I said, it's not.
Oh, bless you. Given how eloquently you put all of that, I don't know what more I can contribute other than to say that I know that this has been very successful for all the reasons that you've been describing. It's about nature, it's about exercise, it's about people down on their luck. It's about a triumph over adversity. It's all the key things that is going to drive a narrative. And I hope for everybody's sake that it is true rather than invented.
Yeah, well, same here. So either next weekend or very soon there's a big apology on the front page of The Observer, or it's taken down, or we're waiting to hear on a further statement from Penguin Books as to how this could have happened.
And then what will Penguin Books do if they accept it wasn't the truth? And if 2 million copies, if those 2 million copies were bought by people who believed it was a true story and are now saying they felt cheated, they felt defrauded, there's a responsibility there as well that the publisher will have to find a way of managing.
Well, we're going to watch out and see what happens with this one, and something will happen, and I can't help but feel that there'll be something quite soon will come out and be said about it. And as I said, it's an allegation, and I hope it's wrong, but it's just an allegation. But there's been quite a bit of digging by the Observer journalist, and either she's going to win every award going, or she's going to lose her job, because there's no in between in this one. It's kind of it's true or it's not. Yeah. David, for the time being, thank you very much. Until the next time. Bye.
Lots of love to you, and especially to Fiona.
Thank you.